This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. This is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. And as you can tell, it's one of my favorite songs, Teacher. It was one of my original rock bands that I represented, Pink Floyd, years and years and years ago when I was in the rock and roll business. So today, our program is about education, and I want to make sure people stay here because most people run when they hear that word. But the question is, has school damaged you? And I'm not kidding about that. Has school made you poor? And what has school done for you? Because every time I get into these discussions with these, I just did an interview into Japan, and I'm fourth generation Japanese American, and this guy was a straight A student. This guy was the biggest coward I ever met. He was so terrified of making mistakes. You know, he was a straight A student or whatever they do in Japan, and he was just terrified. And I kept saying, what are you afraid of? He said, well, I don't want to make a mistake, and all this. So the question again to you is this: has school damaged you, either by not going to school, or did you do well in school and has it damaged you? Most of my friends dropped out of school, and they're multi-millionaires. If you look at some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world, they never finished school. A guy named Steve Jobs, Walt Disney, Zuckerberg, Henry Ford, Branson. So again, the question is, we're going to find out, has school damaged you? But most important, what can you do about it? Like, I almost shot that poor guy in Japan, man. That guy, he kept asking me the most stupid questions. I couldn't believe it. He says, but isn't investing risky? I said, yeah, if you're not smart. And most of my family are academic types. I have the lowest degree in my family. I only have a Bachelor of Science degree, which stands for BS. So anyway, that's our program today. So did school damage you, and is it holding you back right now? And we have an expert in the field. His name is Bryan Caplan. He's an author, economist, and professor of economics at George Mason University. He's an insider, which I like. His book is The Case Against Education, which came out in 2018. And as I said, he has tenure, which is the magic word for every school teacher, which means you can't get fired. And our other person on this phone call today is Alexandra Gonzales. Her father and I are good friends, and she started as an apprentice here at Rich Dad Company, and now she's taken over the company. So she's going to give a more fresher idea on what education has done and what she's learned as compared to what they taught her in school, and what she's learning here at Rich Dad. So again, the question is school holding you back? Has school damaged your little brain here? And could you be richer maybe if you didn't go to school? Now, like I said, I went to school, but my benefit was I had a rich dad who didn't go to school who taught me about money. So it's a very important program because all of us, there is no more important subject than education. But what kind of education? And how much damage has it done to you? Because one of the best things I learned is that if I don't make mistakes, I'll never be successful. And everybody I know who's not successful, they're terrified of making mistakes. They're terrified of getting fired. They're terrified of losing their paycheck. They're terrified of losing their pension. That's what they teach you in school. That was my poor dad. My poor dad wasn't poor until he lost his job, his paycheck, and his pension. PhD, poor, helpless, and desperate. So anyway, this is our program today. Once again, what did school do to you? So welcome to the program, Bryan.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you. And then Alexandra, hello.
Hi, Bryan. Yes, I'm Alexandra Gonzales. I work here at the Rich Dad Company. And I was telling Bryan earlier, I'm fresh out of college, so I'm excited to see what we have to offer today.
So, Bryan, give us a little bit of your background, being an author, economist, professor of economics at the prestigious George Mason University. And then what caused you to write the book, The Case Against Education, came out in 2018.
Right. Well, just to tell you all about my educational credentials. So I was an undergraduate at Berkeley. I got my PhD in economics at Princeton. I'm in my 23rd year as a professor at George Mason.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the reason I wrote the book, I'll say it actually goes back to when I was about 5 years old. And I was just confused by what was going on in school because it seemed like they were teaching us a lot of material that we would never need to know again in real life. And when I asked adults, why do I have to learn this stuff? Usually they just say, well, you have to because if you don't do well in school, then it's hard to get a good job. And I looked around, and it seemed like that was pretty true. So that seemed okay for a while. But then the question, well, why? Why do you have to learn this stuff to get a good job? And, so as I got older, I started toying with the idea, well, maybe what's going on is you need to do well in school just to go and impress people. Basically, you're jumping through hoops in order to get stickers on your forehead. And when I started studying economics, I found out that there's a whole story like this in economics. It's called the signaling model of education. And yeah, it says exactly that. A lot of the reason why school pays, it's not that you're learning useful skills. It's that you are showing that you've got the right stuff to be a good worker.
That's right, a good employee.
So good worker bee. But then the other thing I learned that was kind of strange to me is that even though this idea was well established in economics, there's even a guy who got a Nobel Prize for it, Michael Spence. But still, people who look at the world, people who do empirical work, just didn't take it at all seriously. And I said, this is just wrong. This isn't just a fun little theoretical toy. This is a story that explains the world. And since most economists didn't agree with me, I wrote this book to bring together all the evidence showing that this story actually makes a great deal of sense and really does explain so much about why there's this chasm between the little usefulness of what we learn in school and this great economic value, which does seem to be genuine.
Well, thank you for having the courage to speak, to speak out, because I still catch hell from my family because they're all PhDs. And they always say, how can you say that?
Like I said, I don't feel like I need that much courage. I have tenure, so, I'm not going to get fired for saying any of this.
Well, that word has
in terms of whether I made enemies, I don't know that I have, actually. There must be some people grumbling against me, but I haven't actually really encountered them. Most people have generally either ignored me or been cool.
So anyway, thank you for saying what you do, because my family's still pissed off at me, because how can you say that? Because we all have our PhDs, I said, yeah, but I got a financial statement. You got any? And they don't even have financial statements, Brian. They don't even know what that means. And that's the whole Rich Dad company. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is about the financial statement, income, expense, asset, liabilities. That's what we teach. Alexandra, what was, when you met me, I think I rescued you, right, from school.
You really did. You really did. And I'm actually thankful for that because, like you mentioned before, I came in, hadn't even finished my degree, my college career, and I was already learning so much more. And thanks to that, I think now I'm on the right track, because if I wouldn't have done any of that and just graduated, I don't know where I would be.
Like some of your classmates, right?
Yeah, like some of them who are found without a job and just not knowing like basic day-to-day things on how to maneuver through their career or through their social life.
So, Brian, I
was just wondering, so what were you majoring in?
I was actually in marketing and international business.
And you know what she flunked? Accounting. So I had to teach her accounting. Can you imagine that? I don't have accounting degree. But anyway.
Yeah, there's a general rule, just put international in front of anything and people want to take it.
Yeah.
That'll work out for them.
Yeah. So I have another question, Brian. Like I said, I talked to this guy in Japan, and Japanese are pretty, I think it's funny. People think Asians are smart, and I think I bring that yield curve down. But anyway, this guy was so terrified of making a mistake. And I really just couldn't break him of that mindset. He says, whatever, like you have tenure. Tenure is not part of my vocabulary. I don't want tenure. I don't want job security. I don't want a steady paycheck. But I think what happens for a large percentage of people coming out of school, job security, tenure, pensions, that stuff is most important. And in today's world, that could be dangerous, especially with AI coming out. Pretty soon, I think, when the driverless trucks come out, I think there's 35 states where the number one profession is truck driver. And that's a man's profession. So what are these guys going to do who have been taught that, you need job security, steady paycheck, and a pension when those things are myths today?
Well, so I'd actually say that's like almost all claims about jobs getting automated away. It's just a blank check that people have written and claim it's going to happen. So, if you really look at the data, the period of very rapid automation was basically from like the 20s to around 1970. And since then, automation has been quite a bit slower. And while there's some high-profile examples of automation, like overall, actually, it still seems like progress has been a bit slow. Which I hope you're right. I hope that things do speed up because automation has been great for mankind. But again, I mostly focus on the question of why is there this contrast between the usefulness of what you're learning and the money you get. At least for as long as we got numbers, people have been making a lot of extra money just for studying subjects that seem totally irrelevant, which is puzzling. But that's what I try to explain in my book.
Yeah, so, let me ask you a real personal question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but why do you keep mentioning tenure?
Let's see. So, well, I keep mentioning tenure because you keep mentioning fear.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
Keep telling me that I'm courageous, and I think I would have been courageous to write this book if I didn't have any job security, because then I'd be getting fired possibly for going and writing a book people didn't want to hear. But like where I am, I'll just say, it doesn't take that much bravery. I guess you have to worry a little bit about some disapproval from people, but that's about it.
Yeah. But I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of the biggest financial catastrophes coming out, and it's called the crash of the pension system. And so,
which pension system you have in mind? So Social Security or what?
Jesus, Brian, aren't you an economist? There's defined benefit pension plans, which most police, firefighters, and teachers have. And then you have the 401k pension plan, and then you have Social Security. And all of them are in bankruptcy right now. So as a person who is watching the economy...
That sounds great. I'll say that's grossly exaggerated. So 401ks, by definition, can't be in bankruptcy because it, like the portfolio can always pay, because if the value of the assets goes down, then the amount that you actually own goes down. Your defined benefit ones, those definitely can have problems. Although, of course, notice these are all government pensions. They could just go and raise taxes to go and pay for it. I think that's a lot more likely than that they will declare bankruptcy. Well, again, I think you're an optimist. The state of California is going to say they're not going to pay all the police pensions. I hope you're right, but I don't think so.
No, they've already they've raised the taxes on the people. I'll give you some stats just in case you're interested. The 401k, the average person with a 401k, my generation, baby boomers, they're going to retire with about $70,000 gross inside their 401k, whereas the average school teacher will retire with $1.2 million in a defined benefit pension plan. The problem is the defined benefit plans, most of them are underwater, and that's why they have to keep raising taxes on taxpayers to cover the shortfall between the 8.5% that pensions promise and the 2% that the markets are paying. So that's why
I think that's a problem for taxpayers. It's not a problem for the people getting the pensions. So when you say pension crisis, people are thinking, oh my God, my pension. Not rather, the teachers and policemen are going to be sponging off of us to a greater extent than expected. But that problem has been going around for a long time. I agree that's what's going to get worse.
Do you know the gross shortfall of public pensions in America it will be?
Large, but I don't know the number.
7 to 14 trillion.
Right.
So that's more money than the Fed has, and they'd have to print that much. That's what I'm getting at, Brian, is that, for the guys in the real world like me who haven't had a job ever, and I don't need a pension, and I don't want a 401k, I don't want to be a government employee, what do you say to guys like us? And that's what Alexandra is here for. Because when she flunked out of accounting, what did the teacher say to you?
He told me that the problem was I was trying to I was trying to learn it as opposed to just memorize information, and so I think that's where the school system is fundamentally corrupt, because they're teaching us to memorize this information as opposed to truly learn it and apply it in our personal lives.
So did you go on and learn it?
Yeah, I came here and I learned it, and I stick to my education and my foundation
Did you go back to school to that same school teacher?
Yeah, I went to the same school teacher, and I passed it with flying colors, with the highest grade he had ever seen.
And what did the teacher say to you?
He asked me how I did it, and I told him I did what you told me not to do. I learned it as opposed to memorizing it. And I hope he changed the way he taught it moving forward, because I truly think this can be a big... it could really impact, and in a negative way, people in the future with their finances and their personal accounting.
Right. Anyway, Brian, I'll give you a credit. This is Bryan Caplan. He's an author, economist, and professor of economics at George Mason University. He's got the pedigrees of the Ivy League type schools. He is the author of The Case Against Education. He's also the book, The Myth of the Rational Voter, named the best political book of the year by the New York Times, and Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids. Anyway, it's a very important subject. Is for those of you right now who may be afraid, maybe not making enough money, or maybe your 401k isn't topped up yet, or maybe if there is a market crash, which I'm predicting is coming, and your 401k gets toasted, this is your radio program. So we'll be right back. Hello. This is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today's a very important program about, did education mess you up, or is education valuable, or what else can you do to improve your education? Because education is more important than before. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime on iTunes or Android, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them because repetition is one of the ways we learn. For example, when you play golf, you got to practice a lot, and that's the way you get ahead in life. So we archive them at richdadradio.com, so you have friends, family, or let's say business associates, but especially if you have friends and family who are maybe a little afraid of the future or struggling financially. This is a very important program because I sincerely believe education damages a lot of people because they're so afraid of making mistakes, and they're afraid of asking for help, because in school, if you ask for help, it's called cheating. I was very cooperative in school, but they called me a cheat. So anyway, our guest today is Bryan Caplan, author, economist, and professor of economics at George Mason University. He has a pedigree from extremely good schools. He is the author of The Case Against Education, came out in 2018. The Myth of the Rational Voter, in the Best Political Book of the Year by the New York Times, and Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids. He's also coming out with his latest book, comes out in October 2019. Is called Open Borders, The Science and Ethics of Immigration. It's a very hot subject. Bryan's website is bryancaplan.com, B-R-Y-A-N.
It's actually just bcaplan.com, bcaplan.com.
Caplan. Oh, okay, excuse me, bcaplan.com. Thanks for the correction. And also in the room today is Alexandra Gonzales. She started off as an apprentice at the Rich Dad Company. Her father is one of my best friends, and she is here because she is just fresh out of school. This year is 50 years I'm out of school. She's only 1 year out of school this year. So anyway, Bryan, the most important thing is, like I was asking you, I meet so many people who are so afraid of making mistakes, so they don't invest and all this stuff, and they turn their money over to Wall Street, which I think is ridiculous, because I can beat Wall Street all day long. But they won't do it because they're afraid of making mistakes. And I'm really pressing Bryan for one thing. You wrote the book, The Case Against Education. There's something motivating you. So why would you do that, since you come from the pedigreed world of education?
Right. So I'd say the main thing motivating me is I just see trillions of dollars of government money getting wasted on something that doesn't seem very socially productive, and I think someone should say something about it. And as a professor, I'm one of the few people are likely to believe. So, if I wasn't a professor, people would just say, it's just some guy who's bitter. He feels like the system passed him over. But, like I say at the beginning of the book, the system's great for me, but it just seems like a big ripoff for taxpayers, and I'd like to point it out.
Yes, and then you say something that I've always said, because I graduated in '69, and my class, back then my classmates were making about $120,000 a year, which is not much money today. But in '69, a 24-year-old making that much money was a lot of money. And the reason we made that much money is because we graduated with Bachelor of Science degrees, we had our college degree, but we also graduated with a profession. I was a third mate, and my other classmates were third engineers on merchant ships. So we had professions. And every time I talk to the pure academics, when people say, well, you should send your kid to technical school, learn to be an auto mechanic or something like that, people look down their noses at so-called technical schools. Have you noticed the same thing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of emails from teachers of vocational education saying, I'm the only person that teaches kids that don't really like regular academic school and trying to give them a future, and when I retire, they're shutting down my department. So, I think that's, another really obvious thing. It's just a lot of kids hate school, and they'd like to learn to do something practical, and that would be a much better use of their time, and especially to start at a much younger age before they're totally fed up with the system.
I'm glad, Bryan, I give you a lot of credit, and I thank you for saying what you're saying, because like I said, can you give us what schools you went to again? Because I can't even remember their names, are so high up there.
Yeah, so I was an undergraduate at UC Berkeley, and then I got my PhD from Princeton.
Those are congratulations. That is rarefied air up there. So for you to say it, you have a lot of credibility that I don't have, So again, also our guest is Alexandra Gonzales, and anything you want to comment about your experience of dealing with professors?
Well, I'm glad you're here, Brian, because I think very few professors are willing to point out what's truly wrong with this education system. And like Robert mentioned before, I mean, I'm a year out, and I think I owe my success or my journey to success to my financial education and to working here at the Rich Dad Company, because I truly didn't get anything out of the traditional education system. And you mentioned it before, how we really don't learn anything throughout the career except to have better work ethic and, of course, I guess, put up with the severe boredom that we're put through.
So,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go that far. So, I mean, a lot of people learn reading and writing, you learn some useful stuff, but there's just so much filler. And as to why employers care about it, that to me is what's striking. And again, my story is that, if a person just says, this is too stupid, I'm not going to do it, then employers are nervous to give that person a job. Of course, if you want to be an entrepreneur, then it might not matter so much. But, of course, most people are not very good at that.
Well, most people are afraid of becoming entrepreneurs because they can't take not having a paycheck.
Well, but also their incompetence. So, I mean, they are wise to be afraid.
No, but how do you get
confident? Like a typical person who opens a restaurant, they're a fool, right? The odds that it would ever succeed are just so low. Just because you cook doesn't mean you can run a restaurant. So, there's a lot of crazy optimism behind so many businesses as well. So, I mean, I'd say, don't be optimistic or pessimistic. Just be realistic. Under normal circumstances, how well does what I'm trying to do work?
Well, why would you say somebody's a fool for trying to open a restaurant?
Well, let's see. 80%
just because 99% will fail, big deal.
Yeah. Well, if it's your life savings, then it is a big deal, and it costs a lot of money to try this. So, I mean, it's a very big difference if you have lots of experience running a restaurant. You already have, your customer base set up. If you have all of your ducks lined up, then it's one thing. And of course, most people start restaurants don't have any of that. They just have some delusions of grandeur.
Well, what do you think about the PhDs, the 800 or so that run the Federal Reserve Bank? I mean, they ripped off the entire world with that last QE and that last market crash, and that was horrifying. They failed.
We need a lot more time to talk about that. It's one of the most complicated things in the world.
To me, they were this guy he's your fellow teacher, Ben Bernanke from Princeton.
Yeah,
that man should be.
He's actually one of my advisors.
Yeah, I mean that guy. What he did was horrifying. He just kept QEing or tarping it and all the things he did, and that's why the defined benefit plans are in trouble today, because it's horrifying what's happening. So that's why I speak and I talk to young people like Alexandra, that maybe they go for better paths, because our PhDs are like my poor dad. They really know nothing about money. I mean, when I was talking to this guy from the Fed, he didn't even know what the shadow banking system was. All he knows is the stock market, but he doesn't know the shadow banking system, and most entrepreneurs operate in shadow banking, and the average guy doesn't know that. So I think that those are some of the biggest gaps going on in education today. So I find it interesting. You think it's funny for it's high risk to start a business. It always is high risk, but that's how we learn. We learn by making mistakes. That's my point of view. So I've lost 3 businesses, but I got richer every single time. So that's
right.
That's
and then there's
kind of the
people
difference.
who bet their life savings and fail, and then that's it for them. That happens a lot too.
So what?
I mean, well, I mean, of course, your life savings.
So Brian, let me just say this: when the Fed started printing all that money for QE, and then started with Paulson the TARP, trouble asset we call program, millions of people lost their life savings, their jobs, and their homes because of the PhDs running the Fed. That's my concern. They're all like my poor dad, PhD. So that's why what suggestion do you have for somebody who's afraid of making mistakes? Because that's what they're taught in school. Well, what we teach people is how to learn from your mistakes. It's a different philosophy here.
I mean, I would say neither of those is really what I'd focus on. I just focus on using strategies that work well. I mean, of course, if you're afraid even when you're doing the best you can, that's crazy. On the other hand, there's a lot of bad ideas that you should be afraid of doing. So, in terms of preparing for your retirement, the advice I give people is just to have a high rate of savings at a young age, and diversify, and not just between companies, do it internationally. So if the United States tanks, then you still have money in a lot of other countries. So, to me, that would be the sensible approach.
So you support the save money and invest in a diversified portfolio?
Yeah. Well, especially I support like having a high savings rate, and then of course.
Why would you save when they have QE and ZIRP, zero interest rate policy?
Right. So I just say that it barely has anything to do with what I'm saying. You can just go and take a look at what are the normal rates of return for stocks and other investments.
It's called right now.
Yeah.
There's banks paying zero or below zero, and the United States just dropped its rate from 2.0 to 1.75, and we still say to save money. I can't understand that mentality.
Right. Well, there are multiple ways of saving money. So, of course, if you're going and putting it into government bonds, then that's going to mean a low interest rate for you. On the other hand,
banks, same thing.
Yes. There's, of course, stocks. And then remember, the United States is not the only country in the world.
Hey, Brian, the stocks make no fundamental sense. And plus, our biggest corporations are now BBB, pre-junk, in their credit ratings. I'm not an economist like you, but I understand investing. And I would never do that.
Right. Well, here's the thing. So there are, of course, some people who are highly skilled or highly lucky who do unconventional strategies and are really successful. And if you want to have a small chance of being a huge winner, then try your approach. But for most people, I would recommend tried and true, high savings rate, diversify, put it into again, not government bonds. Would not generally recommend that, but internationally diversified portfolio of stocks, starting at a young age, that has almost that is an extremely high success rate.
Yeah, in the past.
That's what I'd recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, in the past.
Well, what are we gonna give people advice based upon what never happened? Of course, you got to base it upon past observation.
Look, Brian. I hate to tell you this, but Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway was down 40% for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work.
Yeah, so that's why you shouldn't give them all your money.
Okay, well, who should give you money too?
Yes, diversify. Don't put it all into one particular.
Okay.
Yes. So diversify, and not just within one country. Diversify over the world. Don't find a guru and to give him all your money and hope that he really knows what he's talking about. Find 100 gurus. That might work. Okay.
Anyway, Alexandra, final words because we have to go. Brian, thanks for your point of view on this.
My final words are just I'm a true believer in the financial education outside of our college careers, and I do believe that although college does give us a structure, there's some fundamental changes that need to happen. Teach us about taxes, mortgages, investing, things that, learning how to use that. So,
Brian, I finance with 100% debt, so that I'm not in the same category of most investors, but I started at 9 years old playing Monopoly, so that's the difference. But anyway, I thank you for writing the book, The Case Against Education. Keep saying what you have to say. I think it's important that people, check in with what we're teaching our kids. And I think it's personally damaging. I think what the Fed has done with all those economists is damaging, very damaging. It's ripped off millions of people all over the world. So anyway, thanks for just keep going, Brian.
All right, thanks very much. And you can get the book on Amazon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll go into the most popular part of our program, which is Ask Robert, and I'll ask Alexandra to stay by, and she can answer any questions that you may have about what she's learning here at the Rich Dad Company. Once again, we'll be right back with the Rich Dad Radio Show with Ask Robert, and thanks again to Bryan Caplan. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Once again, I want to thank Bryan Caplan, author, economist, and professor of economics at George Mason University. His latest book came out in 2018. It's A Case Against Education. His website is bcaplan.com, bcaplan.com, and his book is on sale at Amazon. And we now come to the most popular part of our program, which is Ask Robert, and you can submit your questions to AskRobert at richdadradio.com. And once again, all of our programs are archived at Rich Dad, all of our programs are archived at Rich Dad Radio, and you can hear them anytime on iTunes or Android, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. And we archive them so you can listen to this again because repetition is how we learn. And if you have friends, family, especially kids today, about education, this is a very important program. And you can send your questions to Ask Robert at RichDad. Go to richdadradio.com. So, what's the first question for Ask Robert, Melissa?
Our first question today, Robert, comes from Jacob in Chandler, Arizona. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, "Hi, Robert. My question is, I grew up in a household that I would classify as having a poor mindset. I've been studying and realize now as an adult that there is a different path. My question is, how do you deal with people who have a different mindset and who refuse to look at money from a different perspective?"
That's a tough question, because I don't know. My family still hates me for writing Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They said you insulted our family. And I said, well, my dad's dead, and I'm sure he's okay with it because he was a teacher. And he did die poor. He only died poor when he lost his job. And when he lost his job at age 52, he found out he was poor when he had no paycheck, no pension, nothing going for him. And he couldn't recover because he had been in school since he was 5 and he got fired at 52. So he really didn't have the skill sets for the real world of my world, with the entrepreneur's world. So it's not right or wrong. It's what world are you preparing for? So, most people realize that, AI, artificial intelligence, is going to take away more and more jobs. Socialism and communism are rising today. Everybody wants UBI, universal basic income, because people aren't making enough money. But Bryan disagrees with that. I said, I know a lot of people who are struggling financially because they just don't make enough. And when the pensions collapse, when there's not enough money, not enough Social Security money, what are you going to do? Is tell someone making $1,000 a month to cut back on your expenses? At the same time, the Fed is printing money. It's called quantitative easing, and interest rates are zero interest rate policy. That means, when I graduated from college, I could put money in the bank at 15%. Today, you put money in the bank, you might be lucky to get 2%. And all these defined benefit pension plans with teachers, school teachers, firefighter, and police get, their pension plans are indexed to 8%. They're not getting 8%. So that's why we have the biggest crisis coming up, called the pension crisis. And that's why I wrote Rich Dad's Prophecy in 2002. It's about this pension crisis that my generation, the baby boom generation, faces today. So that means many adults, baby boomers, will be moving in with their kids, or the kids will be moving in with their adults, because the kids can't find jobs because they're so full of student loan debt where they'll learn nothing. So, I give Bryan credit for the case against education, but I don't think he knows what the real world is, because he's been, his professor was Bernanke, the head of the Fed, the guy who destroyed more jobs and more wealth than any human in history. I think it's kind of funny, really, but it's not funny if you're one of the guys who lost everything. Mm-hmm. But anyway, what's the question again, Melissa?
The question is, how do you deal with people who look at money from a different perspective than you do?
Well, I wrote a book called Fake Money, Fake Teachers, Fake Assets. And you have to, all three work. You have to, for there to be fake money, there had to be fake teachers. That's why they teach you nothing about money at school. And then fake assets. The United States and the City of London, Wall Street and the City of London, have exported more toxic assets than any other time in history. They were called credit default swaps, MBSs, and all this, and they blew up and destroyed the world economy. So we got fake assets. And what Bryan was talking about is put your money in the stock market. The companies that are being financed on the stock market today, their credit ratings went from AAA to triple B. Triple B credit is pre-junk. One more step, they're junk, and they get dumped. Mm-hmm. So I don't mean to be derogatory, but I don't know if Bryan sees the world as an investor. He sees the world as a school teacher, like my poor dad. So it's a classic story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I wouldn't put my money in that stock market. I don't care what it is. I'd rather be in gold and silver. I wouldn't save money. I wouldn't save for the long term. But why would you do it? Zero interest rate policy, ZIRP. Like I said, just a few weeks ago, the Fed dropped the interest rates from 2% to 1.75. I think 13 countries now have zero interest, sub-zero, minus interest rates. Tell me how that works. You give this company your money for 30 years, and they give you back less. I don't know how that makes sense to these economists from Princeton and Harvard and Berkeley and all this. I don't know how it makes sense. So the question to this young person is choose your teachers wisely. I wouldn't listen to financial planners or stockbrokers because most of them are broke. That's why they're called brokers. My best friend and I were just in Hollywood celebrating. He just sold his business. He never finished school. Guess how much he sold his business for? $2 billion. Billion in U.S. dollars. He never finished school. I don't think he cares if he never finished school. He was buying drinks that night. And there's not too many professionals that will sell their businesses for $2 billion because they don't start businesses because exactly as Bryan said, what if you make a mistake? And that's what I was talking about. That's why he needs tenure. That was my poor dad. I hate to say it, but those are the guys teaching our kids. Any comments, Alexandra?
Yeah, I think the perfect advice I could give to someone at this age trying to figure it all out is if you want to have a traditional life, then follow the traditional education system. There's two types of people. There's no right or wrong. There's people like Robert who invest in non-traditional ways, and then people like Bryan who believe in a more secure life. And so tenure. And so if you want to be above average, then start studying things that are above average and start investing in your financial education.
Well, look, there's a million ways to financial heaven. Mm-hmm. There's a billion ways to financial hell. Mm-hmm. And most people are going to go to hell because they went to school. I'm afraid that's the problem. Like I just did an interview out of Japan. It was painful. Yeah. I thought I was talking to my family. They're so afraid of making mistakes. And I said, why don't you take investment seminars? But I don't get a college degree. All they want is that college degree. Have I ever asked you for your college degree?
None of my grades, not my college degree, none of that.
I don't really care. I just know how fast can you learn. You learn very fast.
Yeah.
You'll have my job soon. That'd be good. No. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Brittany in Dallas, Texas. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She says, my question is for Alex. Alex, how did you get your mindset about money at such a young age? You seem to see financial education different than most people your age.
Well, thank you so much for that question. And I honestly got it from my family. Thankfully, I was blessed into having parents that believed in financial education. And so,
but your mother nearly killed me, didn't she?
Yeah.
I teased your mother so many times. She finally got the message, didn't she?
She did. She was a realtor and then started...
No, she was a real estate broker. And what did I tell her?
That she worked for tips. And so that really moved her the wrong way.
I pay my waitresses 20%. I only pay her 6% as real estate brokers. Mm-hmm. Tips.
Yeah. So she started looking at the world through she started to invest. And so I think that's where we got our education from Robert, from the book, from playing the game. And so I'd say start surrounding yourself with those kinds of people and start, if maybe your parents don't believe in that, then start following, there's great entrepreneur advice out there.
YouTube is fantastic.
YouTube is my biggest teacher. Yeah. Instagram,
no, I am.
You are. Even Instagram. So it's just about reading the right books and looking for the right kind of information.
So what's happening is a lot of your classmates, what are they doing?
So I think they follow the traditional education system and they're found in this traditional life, and some of them can't even find jobs or don't even know if they have to invest in their 401k, and some of them have already did and realized it was a mistake. And so I think they're struggling. I think a lot of them are lost, and very few of them know about...
It's expected at your age to be lost a little bit. But,
I'm lost.
But look at how far ahead you are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have a lot of friends that, come to me, and just like the previous question, it's like, where do I start? So I'd say read the book, play the game, and listen to podcasts like these.
You got to mention they all playing games.
The cash flow game. The cash flow game.
Most people your age are playing is let's go to the bar and play some games there. I know that game. It's a fun game.
The cash flow game.
A lot of games out there.
Yeah.
And there's a million ways you can go to heaven and billion ways to go to hell. Mm-hmm. So why don't you give a plug for your little program called Millennial Money?
Yes. So actually, any young entrepreneur that is looking to do with their advice, that just got out of college or hasn't even started and is looking to do with their life, because we're all lost, definitely join in on Millennial Money. This is for you. This is for people who want to figure out their life and learn about financial education.
It's really to learn what you need to learn next.
Yes.
Because you don't learn anything about money at school, did you? did you?
None of it. So this is a platform where we teach you everything you don't learn in
Everything.
school.
There's no way it's everything.
No,
That's too much. Don't make promises.
No, but what we don't learn in school. So you'll learn about investing and taxes and not everything, but a lot of what you need to be prepared. So I definitely recommend it for you guys, and I love doing it. And I'm with Robert, and we have great teachers and guests.
Is it learning
on the show.
fun too?
It's so much fun. Robert makes it funny. He makes crazy faces, and just really gets pumped about teaching us non-traditional ways. So this is for you. This is for every entrepreneur.
So just remember, you have a choice of your teachers and what assets you put in. I don't touch the stock market. I wouldn't be there for anything. Just remember, there's 5 companies that used to be AAA credit. One was General Electric. Today is BBB. Another is Ford Motor Company. AAA, now BBB. AT&T, AAA, now BBB. Dell Computers, AAA, BBB, and General Motors, AAA, BBB. Why would you invest in the stock market with the leading companies are now pre-junk? BBB means pre-junk credit ratings. And that's because the Fed and all those PhDs ripped us off. So ladies and gentlemen, very important program. I thank Bryan Caplan, author, economist, and professor of economics at George Mason University. His book is The Case Against Education, 2018. It's available on Amazon, and Bryan's website is bcaplan.com. You can submit your questions to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com, and thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show.